All right, let's jump right in. What we're about to explore, well, it's not just some story about a legal dispute, not by a long shot. This is about a single home right in the heart of Los Angeles that became the absolute epicenter of a war against a system, and really a war for reality itself. And that quote, LA is a battlefield, it really sets the stage perfectly. Our story kicks off right in the middle of that battlefield. It's about a couple whose fight for their own home just spirals. It becomes this totally surreal conflict that pulls in everything from alleged corruption to experimental art and even psychological warfare. Seriously.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with the war for a house, then touch on California's fever dream, dig into how the system is a glitch, see how they tried hacking the narrative, look at the price of recursion, and finally, what it means to be making your own magic.
Okay, so first up, a war for a house. We're starting with the people at the center of this storm, Eric Seinglens and Elishba. They find themselves wrapped up in this really daunting legal fight over their home in Elysian Heights. And they're up against this perplexing legal thing called adverse possession. Now, you might be wondering, what the heck is that? Well, it's basically a law that says if someone openly uses a property for a long enough time, they can actually gain legal ownership of it, even if they never had the owner's permission. It's weird. But here's the thing. This fight wasn't just about property lines or legal documents in a courtroom. For them, it turned into this massive struggle for their sanctuary, their past, their future. Everything was on the line against what felt like this incredibly complex web of legal traps. It became a symbol for something way bigger. All right, now to really get what's going on here, we have to talk about the setting. And I don't mean the sunny postcard version of California. No, we need to tap into that harsher, more unsettling California, the kind that author Joan Didion wrote about. When she says, the season of suicide and divorce and prickly dread, she's not just talking about the wind. She's talking about an atmosphere, a whole mood where things just feel like they're on the verge of breaking. People, systems, everything. And in that kind of environment, where reality itself feels kind of shaky, the couple started to realize something terrifying. The very systems that were supposed to protect them, they might just be the most broken things of all. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of the system they were actually fighting. Because here's the crucial point they uncovered. It wasn't just broken or inefficient. No, according to the documents they dug up, it felt like it was being actively weaponized against them.
I mean, look at this. The couple started pulling on these threads and uncovered what they allege is this really disturbing pattern. And not just with their house, but across multiple properties. Things like equity and rent skimming, unauthorized construction, even forged court documents, and alleged connections to human labor trafficking. It all pointed to what looked like a systematic, fraudulent operation.
And check this out. Sometimes it's the smallest detail that blows the whole thing wide open. On one document, a property deed, a 401k plan is dated 2011. But the official record, it says 2017. That's a 6-year gap. A detail like that, it doesn't just raise a red flag, it calls the entire legitimacy of the official story into question. So yeah, this was way bigger than a fight against one person. The paper trails started pointing to this whole web of entities. We're talking city departments like the LA Department of Building and Safety, all the way to individuals with alleged ties to the Church of Scientology. It was a battle against a multifaceted network that seemed to know all the loopholes and operate without any fear of consequences. So, what do you do when you're up against a system that feels completely unbeatable? Well, Eric and Elishba's response was, let's just say, unconventional. They realized they couldn't win by playing by the rules of a rigged game, so they decided to start hacking the narrative itself. And their primary tool for this was a concept called recursion. Now that might sound complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It's when a system references itself, creating a feedback loop. Think of it like turning the system's own logic against it. For them, this meant taking the exact legal forms and procedures being used to attack them and using them to file their own counterclaims, creating this kind of endless bureaucratic loop designed to basically jam the whole machine. And this is just a brilliant illustration of their whole strategy. They staged this performance art piece called One Infinite Loop. You have a tennis ball machine just firing a ball against a wall, catching it and firing it again endlessly. A vintage computer printing Play With Me on a loop, and a TV playing a game of Pong where the ball never misses. It's a perfect metaphor for the absurd, closed-off, repetitive logic of a system that's designed so it can never, ever lose. I mean, you could almost call their tactics a form of psyops, psychological operations. This is a wild quote. We declared ourselves Catalonian, not just as an idea, but for real. They were using legal loopholes, performance, and declarations like this to create their own reality, their own jurisdiction. They were literally trying to hack the narrative of the state itself.
But, and this is a really important part of the story, fighting this kind of recursive war against what feels like a broken reality, it comes at a huge personal cost. The constant pressure, the paranoia, it really, really takes a toll.
The sources actually give it a name: recursive sickness. It's this theory that to actually transcend a corrupt system, you might have to go through a period of profound instability. It's like a mental fever, a descent into chaos that you have to endure before you can rebuild yourself and find a new, stronger kind of clarity. The idea, basically, is that sometimes you have to break down to break through. It was like having malware, but for your mind. The constant battle started to feel like wrestling with a mental virus. It became this kind of recursive hallucination, where reality itself felt like a glitchy, looping projection. And your mind gets trapped. These fragments of paranoia just loop endlessly. You're constantly replaying threats, re-examining every little detail, until that line between being vigilant and just being paranoid, it gets completely blurry. So where do you go from there? What do you do when the world that's being presented to you just feels fraudulent? Will you stage a revolution in your own everyday life? The couple found inspiration in this philosophy that's all about creating your own meaning, your own moments of magic. And that's really what this became about. The moment of revolt is childhood rediscovered. It's about taking back control. Their fight for a house transformed into a fight for authenticity. It was this defiant act of saying, fine, if all the external systems have failed, we'll create our own meaning, our own rules, our own world. And this quote from Shel Silverstein just hits it perfectly, doesn't it? But all the magic I have known, I've had to make myself. That's the core takeaway here. When the system wasn't fair, they didn't just give up. They chose to invent their own. Their resistance itself became this creative act, a way of making their own magic. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative question. When the system feels like a glitch, and reality itself feels like a script someone else wrote, how do you write your own code? Because ultimately, this story isn't just about one house in LA. It forces all of us to ask how we navigate systems that feel increasingly unreal, and what tools do we have to reclaim our own narratives.